Hello, and welcome to Wicked Wednesdays, your weekly podcast on sex and sexuality with an emphasis on kink, BDSM, and polyamorous relationships. I am your host, Wicked Fellow, and I am coming to you from the semi-improved and still under construction Wicked Ways studios. You might hear some fan noise, and I will be working on that in the future so that this is a nice, easy to listen to podcast. Little fan noise goes a long way, right? Hello, it is good to be back and good to see you guys again. We are in a new year, same old me, and I have no intention to change, at least not in a bad way. For those of you who are new to the podcast, I'm Wicked Fellow. I'm an adult content creator, and I have been in the kink and poly scene pretty much my whole life. I started this podcast as an outreach to both the BDSM community, but primarily the reason I started this podcast was when we started making kink-based, kind of rough adult films. I realized very quickly that a lot of people didn't get it, especially when we were doing the rougher stuff or the CNC stuff, if you know what that means. YouTube and all the podcast algorithms may flag me for that. I have to be very careful on how I talk about this stuff because America's very puritanical and we don't like to talk about things like sex, especially deviant styles of sex. And I use that term lovingly. But when we first started making films, I realized based on the comments and the feedback I was getting that a lot of people did not understand what we were doing. And so initially, I really just put out a couple episodes, me talking direct to camera, trying to explain to people that, hey, look, everybody's into this, everybody's having a good time, even if it looks like at least one of the participants is not having a good time. And that evolved into this, a podcast directed more towards the kink audience, more towards the BDSM audience, the poly audience, talking to you directly. I still want it to be accessible for people outside the scene, people who are curious about what this lifestyle is about, people who are just getting into it, people who have heard of it, maybe seen some bad movies. 50 Shades comes to mind. There's a new Nicole Kidman movie that I've been hearing not great things about that I'll have to watch and see just how bad it is. This is one of those lifestyles where anybody on the outside of it may have some very interesting ideas about how it actually works. Things like, 50 Shades of Grey is really kind of BDSM fanfic. It's clear that the author did not know how things work in a real life BDSM, kink situation. And that's fine, We write about fantasy all the time. People write about the military all the time. And anybody that's been in the military will tell you, yeah, that's not in any way, shape, or form what it's really like to be in the military. Hospital shows, legal shows, cop shows, they're all the same. If you watch a cop show and you've been a cop, you know that's not how things work. If you're a doctor, you know that's not how things work. If your area of expertise is portrayed in popular media, really good chance they're going to get it wrong, and sometimes so wrong that it's insulting. And that's how media usually portrays what we do. So, in my little one-man crusade, I wanted to get out there as a member of the community, talking to other members of the community, as a representative of the community, and say, look, this is how it really is. This is how it really functions day to day, right? That was my original goal. Since then, it's expanded a bit. It's come to talk about other topics that aren't specifically BDSM and kink and poly related. More of a relationship podcast. A relationship podcast for people that aren't in your good old-fashioned vanilla, straight, cis relationship. Those people are welcome because I believe anyway, the relationship advice that I give, while sometimes very specific to DS, kink, poly couples, I believe is applicable to any kind of relationship you have. Clearly, there are some very big differences in a poly relationship or a DS relationship that aren't going to work in a regular vanilla relationship. However, there are fundamentals that I believe apply across the board. So, for the new year, I'm going to talk about a number of relationship strategies, principles, rules, if you will, that I think cover everybody, no matter what kind of relationship you're in, work relationship, super heavy kinky BDSM relationship, or good old-fashioned vanilla relationship. I believe that this series of topics is really going to be applicable to your situation. Give it a try and let me know. Before we get started, I want to thank our most recent Patreon subscribers, which are Druid, Celeste, Peerless Cucumber, I do in fact like that name, Kevin, a sub, and Midnight. I am still trying to catch up and make sure that I get everybody's name read out if you are a call-out subscriber, which is very inexpensive, believe me. And if you want to hear your name read on the podcast, just let me know, subscribe. And if you have subscribed and you never got your name read out, please contact me. I have always wanted to have a long scroll of all the Patreon members at the end of the podcast and at the end of the YouTube especially. And I finally found a way to do that, except because of the nature of my podcast, a lot of subscribers have specifically asked me to not read their name out. And I understand that. This is not a knitting podcast. And for some people, that anonymity is very important. And I will always respect your privacy in that. So what I can't do is just take the database of Patreon subscribers I have and cut and paste that into a scroll. Because then some people who don't want to be named specifically would get named, and I promise not to do that. So I kind of painted myself into a corner. I did a very bad job of not keeping track, literally, of who wants what, who said what. It's always been a week to week, oh, a new subscriber, add them to the list. Write them, ask them what they want to be called. Oh, they don't want to be called. Get what I'm going here? So, if you have ever subscribed to the Patreon, whether you're a current member or not, does not matter, and you want your name read, just reach out to me, either at wickedfellow.com or my Instagram, or leave a note anywhere you want. I will absolutely read your name out. It's kind of a fun perk. I know that the podcasts that I have subscribed to that do the name read out thing, it's always kind of fun when you sit down for the week and you get to hear your name. So I want to thank you guys very much. Thank all of my Patreon supporters for the incredible amount of support you've shown me. I really love that community, especially those of you I get to talk to every month. That's a great perk, and I really enjoy that benefit too. And as always, if you want to find out more about the studio and the podcast and the Patreon, head over to wickedfellow.com, your one-stop shop for all your Wicked Fellow needs. Hopefully to be improved and updated soon. I have some new features I want to have there. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's topic, which is the truth. This is where I input that very famous Jack Nicholson quote of,
"You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!"
what is the truth? What is the importance of truth in a relationship, especially among intimates? You know, is there anything that I rate higher than honesty? No, because you've often heard me talk about communication in a relationship. I think that communication is the be-all and end-all of a successful, happy relationship. And I don't care what kind of relationship we're talking about. Whether it's coworker to coworker, coworker to boss, intimate partners, friends, parents and children, doesn't matter. Being able to communicate fluidly and honestly with your partner, with your coworker, with your friend, with your spouse, with your parent. There is nothing that will weaken and destroy a relationship faster than bad communication, and no better sign of a good relationship than open, honest, sincere, free communication. So while I could easily say, if you want a good relationship, communicate and be done with this entire series, I want to break it down into some of the fundamentals of communication. And honesty is a very big part of that framework. Communication and honesty dovetail together extraordinarily closely. However, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions around honesty. There's a lot of misconceptions around what the truth is. There's a lot of misconceptions on when do you tell the truth. The simple trite answer is always be 100% honest. And if you're an adult and you're living a normal, healthy, natural lifestyle, being 100% honest all the time is, I believe some people would look at it as borderline psychopathic. How can I say that? Easy. There are a lot of things that are true that are completely unnecessary to be said, right? You see somebody for the first time in 10 years and they've gained a lot of weight. You don't walk up to them and say, wow, you've gotten so much heavier since the last time I saw you. Like, is that the truth? Sure. Is that going to make anybody feel good? No. That is a very clear, child level example of when being honest 100% of the time is not necessary. 100% honesty that's not tempered by kindness is cruelty. It's just that simple. If you see an unattractive person, you don't need to walk up to them and say, wow, I find you especially unattractive. You are ugly. That doesn't help anybody. No one wants to hear that. So there's a lot of honesty that we don't need to share. In a relationship with a close, intimate partner, finding that balance, trying to thread the needle between being very honest and open and sincere and having integrity with your partner and being cruel unnecessarily, that's where it gets really tricky. Because I believe it's very rare in life that we're faced with such black and white decisions of, I think this person's unattractive, so I'm going to tell them. No, that's pretty cut and dry. Only a cruel person, only someone that deviates a long way from kindness and normalcy would feel the need to tell everybody around them the whole truth 100% of the time. So a lot of the times we keep those truths to ourselves. At what point in a relationship does keeping those truths to yourself rather than sharing them with your partner become dishonesty? Now see, I believe that's a really good question. I believe that's the heart of the issue. And like all things relationship-based, sometimes we deceive ourselves. Sometimes we tell ourselves a lie to make ourselves feel better about the truths we aren't telling, right? We have something that's uncomfortable to tell our partner. So we tell ourselves, well, I'm not going to tell them because it would hurt their feelings, and therefore I shouldn't tell them. Sometimes you're absolutely right. There are certainly times in a relationship when you know that the truth of a situation will hurt the other person, and there's no upside, there's no benefit, there's no growth, there's no learning, there's no improvement that's going to move forward the relationship or improve the relationship. Other times, we make that decision out of cowardice. We make that decision out of fear. We make that decision out of a lot of reasons that aren't good. So learning to be honest with ourselves is going to be the very first step in honesty with others. That seems very simplistic and trite and self-helpy, but it's really true. Are you honest with yourself? How good are you at self-assessing your own motivations and being truly honest with yourself? Are you not telling that person out of fear? Where is that fear based? And we're going to get to that understanding of not allowing people to be honest a bit later in this conversation. But right now, let's look at self-assessment. Are you afraid that telling this person the truth is going to cause you harm? If that's a legitimate fear, then no. Telling them the truth is not the right way to go in any circumstances. If telling someone the truth is going to end up in your harm, there's a legitimate and valid reason to withhold that truth. Now, what does that say about the relationship in general? Not a lot of great things. And I do want to make the quick caveat that I'm talking about interpersonal relationships. There's this notion that if you tell the truth, you shouldn't be punished for it. I agree with that 100%, except that it's very easy to slide that to the extremes. Your Honor, I murdered that person. Well, since you were honest about it, no penalty. That's not where I'm going with this. Obviously, sometimes the truth will have consequences in your life. Obviously, there are times when you have to be honest with someone about something that you've done that you're ashamed of, or that you shouldn't have done, or that has harmed that other person. Lying about that thing in a healthy relationship is almost, 99.9% of the time, that is the wrong way to go about it. There are certainly times in your relationship where you will have done something or said something or something has happened that you feel like being honest about will be the end of the relationship. That is the breaks sometimes, right? Because what use is the salvation of the relationship, is preserving the relationship, is saving the relationship, if it's now built on this block that is a lie? Because it's rare in life that a lie lasts. Lies are very fragile. Lies are very friable. They come apart very easily. The truth is very rock solid. That's why it's the truth. It's this solid block of granite. Lies are cardboard and paper mache, and if you put a little pressure on them, they fold. Do you want to have a relationship with someone long term that is based on a lie, right? Believe me, I know this from my very soul, in that I was married for a long time and I was living a lie. I was living as someone I pretended to be. I was trying to be the person my partner wanted me to be, the person I thought I should be necessarily. And it was all lies. It was all based on nonsense and self-deception and deception of my partner. And that was the fundamental flaw in that relationship. I can make a lot of excuses. I was young. I didn't know better. Sure. But I think I did know better. I think that way, way, way back when I was making that decision, do I go left or do I go right? I chose poorly. And I can say that I chose poorly for the right reasons. I feel like my heart was in the right place. But I deeply wish I had made the right decision, which is, this is who I am. Love me for who I am, or don't love me. I cannot pretend to be someone that you will love. And I would give that same advice to anybody at any point in their lives now. Who are you? Be honest with yourself. Understand who you are. Share that with your partner, preferably before you end up in a long-term relationship based on falsehoods and half-truths, right? Honesty, truth, telling the truth in a relationship, this is a huge subject. And it's very easy to get off on these little tangents. I'm trying to weave this together in a way that makes sense. And I think along the way, I will be able to express a lot of the feelings I have towards honesty, integrity, truth in a relationship, the importance of all these things, the fact that it can be extraordinarily difficult to be honest with your partner, whether that partner is a friend, whether that partner is a coworker, whether that partner is a parent, etc., etc. Honesty can be terrifying. We frequently ask ourselves, well, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't like me. For those of you listening on podcast, this is where I stare off into the what are you going to do space. You have to be who you are. You got to be who you are. This is why I support the full spectrum of human sexuality, because I don't want anybody to have to pretend to be something they're not. And society frequently tries to force us into the correct role, the correct line, the correct gender, the correct sexuality, the correct philia, all of these things. And I'm using correct in heavy air quotes here, because there is no one way for people to be, right? Why can't we understand that? But we've spent thousands of years trying to force people to be a way that we think they should be, that society thinks they should be, that the rules think they should be. And I am absolutely done with all of that bullshit. I want you to be who you are. Humanity is this beautiful rainbow spectrum of sexualities and genders and personalities and kinks and desires and loves. The idea that we're a simple binary 1 or 0 is such nonsense, right? I wish we could agree on that. But who you are, fundamentally, is who you are. And I know that sounds like some silly guru nonsense. Don't mind my new backdrop. I can't find my old backdrop. I'm not going to try to become a guru. Not yet. A cult leader, maybe in the future, but right now, I'm just trying to be a advice podcaster. Who you are is who you are. You have to accept that fundamentally. That does not mean you cannot improve yourself. There are a lot of ways to improve yourself. Whatever way you want to. If you don't know how to play an instrument, you can learn. If you want to get fit, you can get fit. There are a lot of ways that you can improve. There are a lot of ways to get better. There's a lot of ways to get worse. It's very easy to neglect yourself. It's very easy to fall into sedentary traps of life, and not just in fitness, but just in your life in general. If you haven't listened to a new album in the last 10 years, that's not an improvement. If you're still stuck in the past with the records you listened to when you were a teenager, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of good music out there. It's very easy to get into a rut, is what I'm saying. So yes, you are who you are. You can improve who you are, but you cannot fundamentally change who you are. I don't think so. Does that mean that I'm taking away hope from people that suffer from addiction, for example? No. People that suffer from addiction can improve themselves. They can become someone that's not reliant on that addiction. Will they ever be someone that doesn't have addiction issues? No. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a struggle they have to deal with, right? If you've ever struggled with addiction, you know what I'm talking about. You don't become someone that's a non-addict. You become an addict that learns how to cope and be successful in life. And that is admirable. That is something to be lauded. That is something to be celebrated. But you know in yourself, you still struggle with those addictions. And I'm talking about the full gamut of human experience. You know, if you're an angry person, if you struggle with rage and your temper, you can learn to control it. I have learned to control it. This is my particular problem, one of my problems. I've got many. I have a big problem with my temper. I've got a big problem with rage and anger. And when I was younger, I had no control over it. And that was a very destructive thing. That was a very bad thing in my life. It ruined relationships. It closed down opportunities in my life. And it made me deeply unhappy because I don't like being angry. I don't like that feeling. But I felt like it was something out of my control, that I could not harness it. I'm still an angry person, right? I'm almost 50 now. I have learned how to rein it in, primarily by seeing when things are getting out of control. I can see myself getting into situations where I'm not going to be in control, and I remove myself from those situations. That's how I cope. That's how I deal with it. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that's a primary factor. I no longer allow myself to be in those situations. If I can feel like this is going to end badly, I'm going to end up losing my temper, I'm going to lose control, and I'm going to do things and say things that I don't want to say or do. You know, a lot of people that deal with addiction are the same way. If they go to a house and there's no alcohol available or no drugs available or whatever their addiction is, they know they're going to be fairly safe. They know that if they go to a bar or they go to a club or they go to friends that they know are going to be using, that's a dangerous situation for them, right? So these things are very closely allied. So, you know, bringing that around, understanding that this is who I am. I'm an angry person. I have a lot of anger in me that I have to deal with. I can lie to myself about that and say, oh no, I'm not angry. I'm a very chill, easygoing guy. Sometimes, yeah. But I also know that at my core, there's a lot of anger there. So I have to deal with that. That's being honest with yourself. Being honest with yourself goes the other direction as well. A lot of people struggle with bad self-perception, a very negative view of themselves. They look in the mirror and they only see their faults. They don't see anything redeeming or good about them. They don't see any reason why their partner might love them or care for them or even like them. All they see are their flaws. That is just as dishonest. You have to be honest with yourself. What am I good at? What do I bring to the table? What are the things that my partner likes about me? My partner likes things about me that I don't like about myself. How do I deal with that? You accept it gracefully. You accept that it's a truth about yourself. Frequently, other people see us more clearly than we see ourselves. That's objectivity. Subjectivity, objectivity. I see my flaws. My partner sees things about me that they like. They are more objective about me many times than I am. So I fold that into my understanding of myself, right? I don't think of myself as particularly handsome. I don't look in the mirror and think, wow, what an Adonis. But a lot of people think I'm handsome. So I fold that into my understanding of myself. I don't think I'm particularly attractive. Some people think I'm attractive. Therefore, there's a spectrum. For some people, I'm not going to be attractive. I'm okay with that. For some people, I'm very attractive. That's kind of cool. And I just accept that. I don't have to be 100% either way. And again, that's an understanding of self. That's a accepting of self. That's being honest with yourself. I was talking to a patron recently that I don't script these episodes. I sit down in front of a camera with a topic I want to talk about, and I talk to you as if I was sitting across the table at a coffee shop. Hopefully, when I'm sitting across the table at a coffee shop, I allow my other person to speak a lot more than I speak myself. But in this situation, I kind of take up both sides of the conversation. This is a big topic, and I'm going to have to break it down because I realize that I just spent a half hour talking about what it means to be honest with yourself, which is good. It's not where I wanted to go with this particular podcast, but here we are. So I'll wrap up with a couple more thoughts on understanding yourself, understanding who you are, accepting that, and having the courage to share that with your partner, because that is a fundamental key to having successful relationships. It's no different than you know your partner likes tall partners, so you wear lifts in your heels on your first date. That's not going to work out long term. And obviously that is a very simple, very, dumb ploy. You wear tall shoes to make yourself look taller to attract someone that likes tall people. Or you can just be who you are. And if you're a short king or a short queen, you got to be that and find someone that likes short kings and short queens or whatever is in their wheelhouse. Don't try to be somebody you're not. And that goes with your physical appearance, your physical aspect, but especially who you are as a person. Why would you want to have a relationship with someone where you're acting or pretending or putting on a facade so that they like that idea of you? Because I promise you, no matter who you are, there is somebody out there for you. There's a pot for every lid. You may be an especially hard to fit pot. I get that. I am an especially hard to fit pot. There's not a lot of people that actually want to have a relationship with me for a lot of reasons. But the people in my life I do have legitimate good relationships with, they know who I am. They understand exactly who I am. I do not pretend. And that is incredibly liberating. That is incredibly freeing. That is incredibly fulfilling on a relationship, person-to-person aspect. The people in my life that I'm close to know exactly who I am. I don't have to hide anything from them. And I'm fortunate. I'm very fortunate in that. I understand how fortunate I am because I had to go through a period where I essentially burnt all my bridges because I had established myself as one person, a particular idea of myself that was unsustainable in the long term. And I had a lot of friends and I had a family and I had a whole situation that depended on me being that way. But it wasn't who I was. So by burning down all those bridges, by taking that leap, by being myself, by saying this is who I am, I lost all of that. And that is scary. Believe me, I didn't really have a choice. I had to be who I am. A lot of you are struggling with this situation where you have a life, where you have a situation, where you have a relationship, where you have a family, based on who you are pretending to be for them. You can delude yourself into thinking that you're doing it for them, that you're acting this part for them, that you're playing this role for them. I say delude, and that sounds a lot harsh. I know that it comes from a place of love, because I did love the people in my old life very much. I still do. And I fooled myself into thinking that because I loved them, I had to portray this persona, I had to be this person, I had to continue to live this lie for them, which unfortunately is really detrimental to any sort of long-term true connection, true love, true interpersonal relationship. The mistake I made wasn't in perpetuating that myth for a decade. The mistake was embarking upon that myth. I never should have gone down that path. And by going down that path, I ended up hurting everybody, myself included. I deserved it, they didn't. And I take full responsibility for that. I never should have made that decision. And hopefully, if you're hearing this, I can prevent you from making the same bad decision of initiating a relationship based on a falsehood, any falsehood, whether that's wearing lifts that make you 2 inches taller or pretending to be somebody you're not to be in that relationship. I cannot implore you, encourage you enough to simply be honest and open with who you are and allow people to be attracted to that. It seems so simple. It seems so basic and elementary. Let people love you for who you are. A lot of people are not going to love you for who you are, and that is fine. It's 100% fine. You are not going to be the ideal partner for every person you meet. You're not going to be the ideal friend for every person you meet. You're not going to be the ideal employee. Any human relationship and interaction we have, you have to be brave enough to understand that you're not going to be to some people's taste. And that is fine. Think about how many people in your world, in your life, in your family, in your relationships aren't to your taste. That's just how life is. Nobody is a universal flavor. Be yourself. Let people come to you for who you are. That is the essence of understanding who you are, self-reflection, self-honesty. If you are one of those people, like I was, who has been perpetuating this myth about you for a decade or 2 decades, and you find yourself stuck in a situation where you feel like if you're honest about who you are, it's going to be the end of everything. I understand. I feel you. I get it. I cannot tell you that being honest now is going to be pain-free. It might be incredibly painful. You might very well lose everything. I don't have the perfect solution for you. I know what worked for me. I know what I did. I did, in fact, take it on the chin and lost everything by saying, look, this is who I am. I am glad that I did it. I'm happy that I did it. I'm happier now. But that doesn't mean it was easy or pain-free or safe or any of those things. So you may be in a situation where you're unable to do that. I understand that. I'm not in any way castigating you for that. Sometimes we make decisions that have long-term consequences, and getting out of those consequences is not as easy as making a simple decision. Follow your heart, figure out where you are, understand that you might not be able to reverse that decision at this point. Maybe for you, the only option is to gradually, slowly, carefully shift the people around you's perception of who you are and let them understand and let them know. That may not be possible for you. And if so, I understand. I get it. I really do. I don't think you're a coward. I know how dangerous and difficult it can be. If you've lived a lie for 20 years it can be really hard to suddenly come out with the truth. I understand that. So, the best I can offer is if you can't get out of that situation, I understand. I have my support. I know what you're going through. For those of you that are not in that situation, for those of you entering relationships, for those of you that are looking to get into a relationship or starting a new relationship, a lot of you are starting fresh. Starting fresh is the best and really the only time you've got to be 100% honest with who you are. Be honest with your partner about who you are. Allow them to be honest with you about who they are. And we're going to get into that in the next episode of Relationship Fundamentals. I've gone on long enough for this one. Hopefully I can edit this down into something a bit more coherent, because I know I went off on several tangents. It is good to be back. I am really happy to be here again. It's been very difficult to get set up in this new place, but as you can see, this is a workable for now solution. New studio coming soon, probably in the next couple of months, and I should be able to get a much more professional and polished product out to you, my faithful listeners. As always, thank you very much to my patrons. If you want to become a patron, go to wickedfellow.com. The Patreon link is there. If you want to find out more about the sites that I run, that link is there as well. We're on YouTube. We're on all the podcasting apps. And apparently, according to Podfeed, we're one of the top 30 BDSM lifestyle podcasts in the country. I also think that list only has 30 people on it, and we may be number 30. But you know what? We'll take it. Looking forward to hearing from you. I always welcome your questions and comments. Reach out to me at wickedfellow.com or my Instagram. I'll tell you that Instagram is much more likely to get to me than Patreon messaging or my website or anything else. Sometimes that stuff gets lost. So don't be discouraged. Reach out to me. Understand that I'm old and technology isn't always my jam. As always, folks, remember that consent is king. Take very good care of each other. And I'll see you, hopefully, next week. Is applicable. Applicable is better. There we go. Everything turned on. My phone turned off. I have missed you all. I have gotten myself all dolled up as I get anyway. I have my very lucky old-fashioned. Decided like that was the drink for this week. Cheers. I was at a New Year's Eve party. A lot of fun. Thank you guys for hosting that. And I wanted an old-fashioned cocktail. And they did not have anything to make an old-fashioned cocktail. But turns out if you use orange triple sec, some sort of rail whiskey, and imagination, you can make something that resembles an old-fashioned. At least as good as any old-fashioned I've got at your average bar. I'm usually highly disappointed in the drinks I get at bars because they're often quite awful. Yeah. If it doesn't come out of a bottle, and if you're not at a fancy bar, don't order a cocktail. That's my tip for the week. Don't order a cocktail at a cheap bar because 99% of the time you will spend between $12 and $16 on something that tastes like disappointment. So yeah, don't do that. Nice cocktail place. Yeah, you're all right. I ordered an old-fashioned at the Vincetia Garage. I never know if I pronounced that right. Vincetia. Anyway, it's kind of a landmark garage in landmark. It was a landmark garage. Now it's a landmark hipster eatery in Detroit. Well, near Detroit. One of my favorite places. M, if you are listening, thank you for getting me out that night. That was quite good. But yeah, they had good cocktails. I was impressed. That was a very good cocktail. Better than the cocktail I had at the very expensive sushi place we went to earlier. So there's that. The sushi was good, though. Cocktail, so-so. Cheers. I think I will cut most of that out. Or maybe stick it in the end. We'll see. place it at the end, stick it in the end. From my profession, probably not appropriate.